Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of Talking Big Four Hoops, post Thanksgiving edition. Joined alongside Mike Bunt again. This is episode 4 of Talking Big Four Hoops on Monday night, where we talk Western New York college basketball. And another exciting week it was. Mike, coming back from Thanksgiving. How was your holiday? How you doing? How you feeling?
Great holiday. Bills win. Was a little nervous, so I'm happy the Bills are 8-3. But there was a lot of good local college basketball played last week. The Bonnies taking on Notre Dame, Niagara at St. John's, and then you got a Big Four rivalry game between UB and Canisius. So a lot to talk about tonight.
Absolutely, it was quite the week in different ways for all of our Big Four teams, as well as some coaches and players from with the Big Four history. But let's start, Mike, where you started your points. Let's talk about St. Bonaventure. The Bonnies in the Gotham Classic take down Notre Dame 63-51, made it look normal, made it look like it was supposed to be that way. A double-digit win, pretty much a wire-to-wire victory that looked very good in the process. Chad Venning doing what he does lately. Kyrell Luke doing what he does lately. So 4-2 the Bonnies are now. Big win over Notre Dame. Is this starting to feel a little bit different than it was just a couple weeks ago after that disappointing loss at Canisius?
Yeah, the Bonnies looked really solid against Notre Dame. I know this Irish team isn't a team that's expected to be at the top of the ACC, but they're still a Power 5 conference opponent that made the NCAA tournament last year. And St. Bonaventure and their youngsters looked every bit as good as the Irish in that contest. Chad Venning really came to play. He was big down low for them. A nice young transfer. Jan Farrell, the top 150 recruit, he looked solid as well. And it wasn't really the Daryl Banks show. He was relatively quiet. Barry Evans, another much heralded freshman for St. Bonaventure, pretty quiet overall. But Venning and Farrell and Kyrell Luke, who had some big threes late in the second half. And you know how the Bonnies get it done? They play great defense. They take care of the boards, and they really kind of slow down opponents. St. Bonaventure likes that slower tempo, and it took Notre Dame a good 10-plus minutes of game action to really feel comfortable. And by that point, St. Bonaventure already had control of the game. This was a wire-to-wire solid performance for St. Bonaventure.
You talked about the rebounding, like 38-32 advantage for the Bonnies. Whenever you cannot rebound a power conference team like that, especially one like Notre Dame, you're going to be in good shape to pull off these wins. They held Notre Dame, Mike, to 34% shooting, just 11% from three. Bonnies didn't shoot it great themselves, shot just 40%, but went 10 for 24 from three. You talked about maybe it wasn't the Daryl Banks show, just 8 points. But one thing I like, Mike, and sometimes we don't talk about this a lot, but when a guy doesn't have it going, sometimes they tend to just shoot, like that old saying, shoot or shoot. And Banks realized it wasn't his night, and he let other guys get involved. He ended up taking 8 shots. He went 2 for 8, but he went 2 for 5 from three. He added 3 rebounds, 3 assists. So you take a look at a guy when if Bonnies can win a neutral floor game against Notre Dame where Daryl Banks is nowhere near the best player on the floor, that's a great sign for St. Bonaventure. You talked about Kyrell Luke. He goes for 16. He's 4 for 6 from three. But he goes 16, also had 6 assists and just 2 turnovers. That's a 3-to-1 assist to turnover mark. That's a number Schmidt's got to be just ecstatic with, Mike, 3-to-1. And then Venning goes for another double-double, 14 and 11. Jan Farrell, another double-double for him as well, 11 points, 14 rebounds. Just a lot to like if you're a St. Bonaventure fan, alumni, player, coach. Like I said, the tune has really changed from just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and rightfully so. And I think the one thing about this Bonnet team is we knew they were going to have a tough go of it early in the season with all the newcomers. There isn't a team in all of college basketball that has returned less than this St. Bonaventure squad. All of their key players gone. And they didn't have a bench last year either. And the few guys they had on the bench also gone. So it's rare that you have to start basically brand new in college. Even in this era of the transfer portal, you typically have at least 2 or 3 players that are going to come back that have some knowledge of the
Yeah,
system and everything. This Bond team had none of that. In most of their incoming transfers, they weren't from bigger schools that maybe they were overlooked at a big program or didn't live up to the hype at a P5 school. Mark Schmidt went the other way. He went to the smaller colleges in D1 and found players that have produced or have the potential to play at the higher level. And so far, so good. I'm not going to say that a Daryl Banks is a star or a Kyrell Luke is a star like we've seen with some of these Bana guards in recent years. You can go on and on and on. But they know their role, and I think they, at least in Banks's spot, he is a solid placeholder until they bring someone in next year to take over. Kyrell Luke, he's going to be on this team for years to come. He is going to have the chance to develop into something special. Was already a freshman of the year at Holy Cross, and you add these forwards, these wings,
yeah,
and that's where you have something really solid. The guard play at Bono right now, it's passable, but it's really these wings, these forwards at Bono that are going to be the reason that they're going to have a lot of success this year because Chad Venning went body to body with ACC talent, and he looked fully ready for the challenge. Jan Farrell is 6 games into his college career, and he's already averaging close to 10 points, 7 rebounds. And Barry Evans was the one that actually had more preseason hype, and he's right around that 8.5 rebound a game mark, too. So it's only going to get better for these guys. And that's the encouraging part. I think back to when
yeah,
the Bana trio was Kyle Lofton, Osuna Shuni, and Dominic Welch. It took them all the way until midway point of conference play to really start feeling good about that squad, and then they took off.
yeah.
With forwards in college basketball, it typically takes more time. The fact that Bana already is seeing some early returns from this group is super exciting and way sooner than I would have expected. Yes, it came at the expense of a bad loss to Canisius, but I am more in line to think that this team is going to be good going down the stretch than what we saw against Canisius.
Yeah, and one thing you talked about last time, Mike, was the concern about the minutes. And you take a look at the minutes, only 6 guys in double figures. Banks and Luke both play 40. But you look at the um, shots, shot selection, and way they were dispersed, and nobody went and had a free for all day. Luke took the most shots with 13. Venning took 12. Farrell took 9. Banks 8. Evans 5, Flowers 6. Like the offense is spread out. Everybody knows their role. And you think back, I couldn't help but think back to a movie, right? The movie Miracle. And remember they're scouting for the players and Herb knows his team right away, right? He knows them, 10 minutes into practice and he looks at Craig Patrick says, "Well, you're missing some of the best players." And he says, I'm not looking for the best players, Craig. I'm looking for the right ones. And that's what Schmidt does, man. I mean, I swear to God, you plug Mark Schmidt into that movie, not only do they have a little bit of the same, accent and look to them, but, I mean, the thought process is the same. Schmidt looks, and you kind of touched on this a minute ago, Mike. He looks for the right guys. He didn't go to, get the ninth guy off the bench at Syracuse or these major schools. He went and found some guys he thought could fit into this program and that could do a plethora of different things well, could complement each other, and could allow them to have a seamless transition and not have a major drop off. That's what I like the most about this team is that they're becoming a team quicker than I think me and you both thought.
Yeah.
Um, Individual talent aside, they're becoming a team quicker than I thought. This team, to me, and I'm so high on Dominic Welch in his career at Zabana, and I used to call him a Swiss Army knife, but this team is just a bunch of Swiss Army knives. They're a bunch of Dominic Welches in different ways. They know their role, they do it well, and they complement each other. And so far, if you're a Bonnie's fan, you like what you're seeing. It's just, you gotta like what you're seeing.
And one last point about this Boston team before we move on. I like that Smith not only knows what he's looking for when he adds a player, not often going after the 4-star guy or the high rank guy, but finding the guy that's going to fit what he's trying to run on both sides of the court. But he also knows how to put together a schedule that fits what the team's objective is going into
Yeah,
a season.
that's a good
Last
point.
year, obviously, a little disappointing that they didn't make the NCAA tournament, but he knew they were going to be a top 25 team, and he put together a schedule of high caliber competition that helped raise their ability throughout the year. Yes, they fell short, but come NIT time, they were ready for the challenge and they went all the way to the NIT Final Four. This year, he knows that he has a young squad that's going to take some time. And what does he do? He puts together a schedule with some good teams, but mostly teams that will give them a little bit of a challenge, but still the ability to build their confidence and play their way to having a good run in A10 conference play. The exact opposite of what really happened at UB. Some people think just schedule tough games, you're going to get better. And that might be the case. And some coaches might have that philosophy. I believe with some of these younger college athletes, if you are getting destroyed on a game by game basis, that is the ultimate confidence killer. And some players aren't able to overcome that, especially when they're used to dominating their entire
Yeah.
careers. You look at what Bana has coming up: Middle Tennessee, Buffalo, Cleveland State, Iona, Florida Gulf Coast, Siena, Northern Iowa. Then they have A10 play. None of those teams are unbeatable. Sure, Bana might lose a few of them. Maybe they don't. But in those games, they're going to have enough competition against similar skilled players to where they're going to have the opportunity to build their confidence and hopefully come A10 play, also be ready for the challenge of what they will be facing on a game by game basis. And I like the strategy he took. I think it was smart for this squad to come together.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good mix of, you're playing some quality home games, playing some quality road games, playing some quality neutral floor games, albeit the South Dakota State game was basically a road game.
That's a road game.
But, the Notre Dame game was, neutral floor. Iona's going to be a neutral floor again, albeit down the street from Iona in Brooklyn. But you're right, Mike, and that's a great point. He brings up he schedules a schedule that's going to help his team not only win games, get better, gel, but they're not cupcakes, right? He's not paying Colgate and Cornell for the 22nd straight year to come into his gym. He's not going to a stretch of North Carolina, Duke, and Penn State. He's scheduling good games, winnable games, mixing in different types of leagues, and most importantly, like different types of styles, right? When he plays Iona, Iona's going to want to run, okay? Certain teams are going to want to run. Florida Gulf Coast, they're going to want to run, okay? Other teams on the schedule, they don't want to. They want to slow it down. They want to go, fast. And when you get in the NCAA tournament, you get in the A10 play, you get in the conference tournament time, postseason time, you're going to face all different types of play. So that's a good point, Mike, and probably not one that's talked about enough.
And it's about knowing what your team goals are. Yeah. Last year, worst case scenario, they wanted an at-large bid. Didn't happen, but it was realistic. And there's many years where you have UB, St. Bana, and similar teams that you would say just underneath that power level or high mid-major level, where if all things go right, maybe they have a chance to contend for an at-large bid. This is not one of those years for any of the local Big Four schools. So what do you do in that type of situation? Well, in a year that's focused on development and trying to grow your team, it's about being ready for conference play. So nice approach for him. Like I said, contrast with what UB is doing this year, but we'll talk a little bit about UB in a moment, coming off back-to-back wins over George Mason and Canisius.
So this upcoming week, Mike, for Bana, we'll just touch base on their schedule. They get Middle Tennessee State in Olean on Wednesday night. That's a 7 p.m. start, I believe.
Toss-up
Bonaventure, and also they go to Buffalo this Saturday, 2:30, which should be a great atmosphere, great game. Wish I could be there. Have a close friend's wedding on Saturday. So won't be able to make it, but we'll be sure to tune in, while those vows are being exchanged and see what's going on with the Bonnies and Bulls. But let's move on to the Bulls, Mike. Let's talk about the other three. We're gonna kind of lump them in together, and rightfully so. But we had a big four matchup over the weekend. UB and Canisius. UB beats them by 20. And we'll talk a little bit about St. John's as well and their good fight at St. John's. I'm sorry, we'll talk about Niagara's good fight at St. John's. Sorry about that. So UB beats Canisius as expected. Earlier in the week, they beat George Mason. So they recover from that 1-2 stint down in the Virgin Islands. They come up, take care of business, 2 in a row. The Canisius game, as expected, Mike. I think we can both say that. So
Yeah.
give me your thoughts on what you saw from UB this week.
So we'll get to UB in a second. Canisius also had a loss at Cornell, so not a great week for them going 0-2. But with UB, it was a week that they kind of had to have. George Mason just getting one win in the Virgin Islands. I'm not going to say it salvages the trip, but at least it gives you a little bit of a positive to end the trip. They did play well against Drake. The Howard loss was what was difficult. We talked about it last week. Coming back home, taking care of Canisius in convincing fashion, that's what Bulls fans would expect. And I think if you looked at the season overall and you just take out the Howard loss, most of the results are not horrible for UB. Beating Colgate at home was a good home opener. Beating George Mason, a good result. Losing to Drake, the disappointing part was how they lost to Drake.
Yeah.
They played well against the top 100 team. And then UConn, obviously that was expected to be a little bit of a blowout. But so 3-4, you're not pissed off if you're a UB fan. You're not exactly happy. But this upcoming stretch is going to be very telling. You look at the Canisius game.
Yeah.
It's the Curtis Jones show. That is what this team has turned into. Curtis Jones is the scorer. He is the alpha of this Bull squad, which is good and bad when you're the point guard and the primary ball handler. You're going to be able to create every opportunity, but you're also not, I don't know, 22 points. I'd like to see a little bit more ball movement, but he is coming into his own.
Yes.
9 of 17 from the field, 4 of 10 from three-point land, 6 rebounds. That's good. Then you have Foster adding 12, Zid Powell with 14, Smith with 10. It was a good performance, but can they do it when they're playing more difficult competition? We're gonna see against St. Bonaventure. You look at the upcoming UB schedule, outside of the games against St. John Fisher and SUNY Canton, you have Bona, you have top 100 Tulane, you have top 30 West Virginia, top 30 Michigan State.
Well, Mike, I want to talk about the schedule.
That's 5 losable games.
I want to talk about the schedule and exactly the positives that we just talked about Bonaventure's schedule. They're equally as negative on this side. And let's dive into the schedule if we will, Mike. Let's not only talk about the opponents, but I want to talk about the scheduling. And a lot of this is not on UB. Some of this just happens, and it is what it is. You have opportunities to go play in early season tournaments like this, and your schedule kind of gets a little screwed up. But they go play last Friday the 18th. They go Friday the 18th, Saturday the 19th, Monday the 21st. So 3 games in 4 days. You're at the Virgin Islands. Then you're off for 6 days. You play Canisius. Now you're going to be off for 6 more days, and you play St. Bonaventure. Okay. Then you go Division III team, top 100, top 30, Division III team, top 15. I just, Mike, I'm a little like,
it's confusing.
We're not going to learn anything about this team in the next 3 weeks, Mike. We're not going to learn. We talked about the identity. I talked about the identity last week. I wasn't sure what identity this team had. I didn't see an identity against Canisius. I just saw the better team win. And a lot of times that happens, and no knock on them. They found a way to win the game. I'm not sure we're going to see an identity against Bona. Those are emotional games. They're rivalry filled. I'm sure Bona will bring a heck of a crowd down, up from Olean. But I don't know how much you're going to learn there. You're not going to learn anything against St. John Fisher. Tulane is going to be – that might be the game.
Potentially.
right? But then I don't know how much you're going to learn against, at West Virginia and Morgantown. You're not going to learn anything against SUNY Canton. You're not going to learn anything against Michigan State. You might learn how tough this team is, and that might go to their identity, Mike. That might go to their identity, their toughness, their grit, their fight. We'll see how mature they are, right? There's no easy task going to Morgantown, going to Michigan State. I mean, two of the tougher places to play in the country. So I'm a little concerned that they're going to enter MAC play still a little bit
I think
lost on their identity.
we got to think, what is Jim Weitzel thinking with the schedule? Because, like I said, I have my viewpoint on it, but that doesn't mean that my viewpoint is the only correct way of looking at it. Some coaches do have the belief you build your roster, you build character, and you get better by challenging yourself. So I'm not going to say that what UB is doing with their schedule construction is wrong. I'm not going to say that. It's not how I would put together a schedule if I was a Division I head coach. But you do see this from some mid-majors like Akron, Kent State, where on a year-to-year basis, they have a lot of transfers, a lot of newcomers, and they will schedule difficult games, and they might not have the best record heading into MAC play. And then next thing you know, you get to early February and they are rolling. So there, you can say maybe challenging yourself can have a positive impact. So it's not always necessarily going to be a bad thing and backfire. The reason why it's a little confusing is obviously we know why UB had Canisius and St. Bonaventure. That's due to the local ties. The two games against non-D1 opponents, I get that they've done that in the past. It's weird to sandwich them where they have them. It's almost like UB knows, at least when they put that together to schedule, that Michigan State, that West Virginia are likely going to be losses. St. Bonaventure and Tulane are going to be difficult games. So let's put a couple of wins in there so our record doesn't ever get too out of control. But realistically, if you look at those games, ESPN Basketball Performance Index has it as a toss-up. Ken Pom has UB with a 42% chance. Ken Pom gives UB a 23% chance against Tulane, a 5% chance against West Virginia, a 5% chance against Michigan State. Realistically, you lose 3 out of those 4, and then you get the 2 wins against the non-D1 competition. You're sitting at 6 and 7 heading into conference play, which not the worst, but when you're looking at a team that might be trying to be 500 or slightly above 500 in conference play, you're looking at a season that's going to be something like 14 to 17 wins overall, which is lower than what we have become accustomed to at UB. So I guess it really depends. How does this team respond? We saw in the last week, 2 weeks, Kent State have a lead at number 2 Houston with under a minute left to go. Yeah. We saw Ohio University take number 20 Michigan to overtime and nearly defeat them with time remaining. 6-point lead with 4 minutes left. Can UB give us a special performance on the road at West Virginia or Michigan State? Is that possible? Yeah. Is it possible that they could sweep St. Bona or Tulane? Maybe. This Bona team is not unbeatable. Like we said, Bona lost to Canisius. So UB can definitely give them a game. Yeah. But it's going to be difficult with all these new parts. And we've already seen them against some of the tougher competition they played this year. And it was sloppy against James Madison and UConn. Drake, surprisingly good. But what are we going to see in these next 4 to 6 games?
Yeah, it makes me think, Mike, that they might have been struggling for home games. And when they took the Virgin Islands tournament, maybe it set them back some home games. I don't know. Like I said, I don't mind. You can't pass up the opportunity to go play Michigan State. Can't pass up the opportunity to go play West Virginia. I'm just not sure I would be putting these games in between those like they are. I just don't think that you learn a whole lot when your guys are up 49 at halftime over an inferior opponent at every level. I like one of those games for Division One teams, Mike. I don't think any more than one is necessary. I think they're kind of silly. They're just, they're just silly. I mean, there's 300 and what 335 Division One basketball teams to schedule 30 games. You really only got to schedule 10, Mike. I mean, you got to schedule 10 to 12 games because 18 or 20 are scheduled for you. So you schedule 10 games. I just don't know if two of them need to be against NCAA Division III schools.
Well, let's focus on the game in front of them then.
Yeah.
Before moving on to more Canisius and Niagara. St. Bonaventure, UB. Right now we're seeing Bona at 4-2, UB at 3-4. This game is in Buffalo, which does help UB out a little bit in this matchup. How do you see it going, and what do you hope to see?
So here's the thing. I think that the way to beat this UB team is to slow them down, is to make them run offense. And the way you do that, Mike, is you slow it down and you score points. Because when they got to take the ball out of the basket, they can't get out and run. UB is still lethal in transition. Okay. Powell, Adams, Jones, these guys are lethal in transition. Okay. Hardnett runs the floor. Their bigs run the floor. So how do you do that? You got to be good offensively. You got to take care of the ball if you're St. Bonaventure. And they've done a pretty good job of that this year. So I think St. Bonaventure if they can take care of the basketball and if they can win the rebounding, which I assume they will against what I feel are weak UB forwards, I think Bonaventure wins this game, Mike, and I think it's probably about an 8 to 10 point game when it's all said and done. I don't know what the line on that game is. It might be a little early in the week to see. I would envision, like you said, it's probably going to be around 3 or 4 going SBU way. It wouldn't shock me if it's 1 or 2, just based upon the rivalry, it being in Buffalo. Students will be there. So I think Bonaventure ultimately wins the game, Mike. I think there's more paths to victory for St. Bonaventure than there are for UB. I think UB needs to shoot it extremely well. I think they need to shoot 39, 40% from 3. If they do that, like take 25 threes and shoot 40%, we got a different ball game on our hands. I think that's the way UB wins. Get in transition. The game has probably got to be in the 80s for them to win. Anything lower, I think it favors St. Bonaventure.
I think it's going to be tough for the reasons you just mentioned. St. Bonaventure is able to slow teams down. And when UB doesn't have that tempo, doesn't have that ability to play fast, at least in recent years, they have not been the same quality. It's like if you can slow them down, they do not feel comfortable. And if you look at the advanced numbers right now, UB's possessions are some of the quickest in the country. They do not like to play slow. No. And UB also has been struggling with turnover percentage. They're one of the lower ranked teams in offensive rebound percentage. They're shooting below 30% from the three-point land, while St. Bonaventure has been over 37%. So it's one of those things where if Bona feels okay slowing the game down because they trust that that they can play well defensively, and then they believe they have the bigs to get things done in the post, and they have the length to force you into poor shots. Yep. And for UB, what that signals is they're going to have to make shots that they haven't been making this year. Now, Canisius against St. Bonaventure made their shots.
That's the recipe right there.
Yep. But Canisius also recently against UB had one of the worst three-point shooting performances I've ever seen. So it really comes down to shooting. Or do you have a hot day with your shots, or do you not? And I am going to, more often than not, choose the team that controls the tempo, the pace, and has the length in those games, and that's going to be St. Bonaventure.
Yeah, you. That's a great point, Mike. Canisius goes 11 for 22 against Bona, and that game ends up being 84-80, which is 2 of the 3 keys I just talked about. The games in the 80s, it favors UB. If they make over 10 threes and shoot around over 40%, that favors UB. If they can out-rebound St. Bonaventure, that favors UB. I think those are the three keys. If UB can stay competitive on the glass, shoot a high percentage from three and make at least 10, and get this game in the high 70s and low 80s, I think they have a chance to win. And I think, Mike, it probably is more of a toss-up game.
It
It
is.
probably
It's
is
a
more of a
50-50.
45 game.
Yeah. And I am very interested to see how Bana comes out in this game, because if it's one of those where Daryl Banks puts up 20 plus shots and Kyrell Luke is putting up 17 shots, well, then I think UB has a chance. I liked what Bana did against Notre Dame, which obviously they're going up against a physically gifted team, but Notre Dame is a high quality, high percentage shooting team, and they shut them down.
Yeah.
And I really liked how they got Chad Venning involved, and I think Jan Farrell is just an absolute steal for the Bonnies to have. This is a guy that had offers from Syracuse and other power schools. To have him on the court, dynamic at 6'6", it's going to create some matchup problems, and his ability to rebound the way he does and do just the different skills he brings to the table. It's going to be tough for UB to match up against. If I'm going to make a pick, I'm going to say it's going to be one of those 67-63 games. I'll give Bana a slight advantage. Would not be surprised this game going either way.
Yeah. I'm going to say 65-56, Mike. I think it's 65-56. I think Bana is able to hold UB under 60, which is tough to do for any team, but I think they can do it. I think they'll limit the amount of possessions, which will be key. It's going to be interesting to watch. I hope it's a good game. I hope it's a little closer than the 9 points I just predicted. I'd like to see
I'm hoping to see Curtis Jones, Zid Powell really get involved. Zid Powell
I'd like
has
to
been
see
great.
LaCool Hartnett, Mike.
Yeah.
I like this is a game for LaCool Hartnett right here. He can run up
Absolutely.
and down the floor. He's going to be the fastest big man on the floor. We'll see if he takes advantage of it.
And he can give Bana issues. He has the size, he has the athleticism.
Versatile.
It's the consistency that UB needs to get out of him. And unfortunately, he hasn't developed the way we thought in his UB career. But now as a senior, even coming off the bench, he has a chance to be a very solid player for UB this year.
Yep.
This is a game he's going to need to step up. They're going to need John Smith to step up. They're going to need these big men that enter this year really not with high expectations for UB to really body up against the talented youngsters that St. Bonaventure has to offer.
Yeah. So, Mike, let's just jump real quick. Let's talk a little bit of MAT action, a little bit of Metro Atlanta Conference. They open play this week. So, Canisius, we kind of talked about it, a 9-point loss at Cornell, the 20-point loss at Buffalo. This coming off of the win against Fredonia, Division III win. They go at Siena on Friday, at Iona on Sunday.
That's brutal. What a brutal start to MAC play. A Siena team that just beat Florida State and Seton Hall.
Yeah, Mike, I'm a little. You know what though, Mike? It's the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. I wouldn't be shocked if UB steals one. I'm sorry, if Canisius steals.
Hey,
one.
Canisius beat St. Peter's last year, and they went to the Elite Eight. So.
Yeah. It wouldn't shock me if they went to Albany and beat Siena. It wouldn't shock me if they did that and then lost by 39 at Iona either. So I'm gonna reserve. I'm just gonna reserve. I want to see MAC play. I want to see conference play. I want to see Reggie. Let's get his guys on the road, get them out of their comfort zone, and rock and roll. This is one neat thing about the Metro, Mike, is these two early games they decided to add in December like this to open up. So no easy sledding for the Griffs. I think we want to talk a little bit more about Niagara here, give them some praise about the way Greg Paulus has got his guys playing this year. Currently sitting at 3-3. Mike, they won 3 in a row before a really nice tough fought game at St. John's. They end up falling by 8. End up winning the second half though, which was nice to see. Noah Thomason goes for 24. You watched that game, Mike. What'd you see? What are your thoughts on Niagara right now?
So this Niagara team is better than I anticipated before the season. I was wondering, how are they going to replace Marcus Hammond, one of the best players in the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference in recent years? And the answer is simple. Noah Thomason. He has been very good to start this season. You already mentioned some of the stats, but I'll go over a few of them. Against a St. John's team that is 7-0 and recently beat Syracuse, Noah Thomason, 10 of 21 from the field, 4 of 6 from three-point line, 24 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Then you got Aaron Gray, who had 7 points, 10 rebounds. And then Sam Iorio, 12 points, 7 rebounds. Niagara loses by 8, but that might have been one of the most encouraging games that I've seen from them so far this season. This team has been playing pesky. This team has been playing with a lot of fight. They were down double digits in the second half, and they cut it down to, I believe, within 5 points. And I'm seeing good character traits that will lead to wins in MAC play. Are they going to be a 21 team? No. But this Niagara team has the ability to be a 500 squad. And they had a win earlier in the week, too, against Deauville, which we were joking about that, texting the other day that it would be a blowout, and of course it was. But I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing. Noah Thomason, the offense goes through him. Sam Iorio, I like him. He transferred to Niagara, was probably expecting to be more of a stat sheet stuffer when he first came to the Purple Eagles. Hasn't exactly played out like that, but I still like what he brings to the table. Obviously, mentioned Aaron Gray. Braxton Bayless has some ability, too, as a person setting up the offense. And you look at KenPom, and I do want to do this for Canisius, too. This upcoming stretch is going to be very big for Niagara's season. So Niagara's KenPom is 234. Not good, but much better than what Canisius is at right now, which they were in the low 290s last I checked. But after Iona and Quinnipiac, which they open up both these games on the road, they have a stretch with Eastern Michigan, NJIT, Binghamton, Mount St. Mary's, Rider, Fairfield. And in those games, they're expected to win 5 out of 7. If Niagara can win 5 out of the next 7, they're sitting at 8-5 near the midway point of the season.
Yeah.
That brings up the possibility of a 500 or better record. In fact, KenPom has them finishing 15-14 overall. That would be the best season under Greg Paulus to this point. So are they getting to the top of the MAC yet? No, which little disappointing that we're getting close to I think year 4 now already for Greg Paulus in year 4 and not having that top end success, but you're seeing the slight progress and it's trending upwards. Like I said, stinks that Hammond is gone, but it looks like Noah Thomason is going to be a solid replacement as far as the score, primary alpha taking over.
Yeah. One thing I like about this team when I watch them is they play for each other. They play hard. They're the first guys on the ground. If they stat those over there, which I'm assuming they do, their blue collar points, as UB would call them, would be off the charts. And that's got to be a Greg Paulus thing. And that's one thing I like about this team is they fight. So not only is Thomason skilled and some of these other guys can play a little bit, haven't seen enough yet. The sample size needs to get a little bit bigger. And it's unfortunate, Mike, because I don't have the same patience with UB. And I seem to be having this patience with Niagara.
It's an expectations game. You've seen UB play at an elite level within the last 5 years.
Yeah.
You're disappointed that even UB's lesser years recently, they've been hovering around 100.
Yeah.
The Niagara, we haven't seen that in a long time. They've had a few really good years sprinkled in every once in a while, but most of those were back in the Joe Mahalik days. Obviously, Casey didn't have the greatest success. So with Niagara, we're more patient because we have yet to really see it develop under Paulus.
Yeah.
But once that success does come, the expectations and the desire to repeat it will be there. I will say this, the expectations at Niagara are different than the expectations at Canisius. Just doing a quick thing with the KenPom for Canisius, just want to pull this up quick. Right now, they're 297 in KenPom. Their projected record is 9-20. In this upcoming stretch, and it's not going to play out like this, but you had the Siena, Iona, Toledo, Penn State, Florida Gulf Coast, Ryder, Mount St. Mary's, Manhattan, St. Peter's. It's not until Friday, January 13th, when they play Marist, that Ken Pom projects Canisius to win their next game.
Wow.
I'm not saying it's going to play out that way. I doubt it does. This Canisius team is better than that. But that is 9 straight games, and you add the 2 losses they already have in a row. Ken Pom is projecting an 11-game losing streak for Canisius. That would have them at 2-13 at the halfway point of the season. It's not going to play out that way.
Yeah.
But the point being,
but on paper, this is what on paper and metrics, Mike. This is what the average person. This is what intelligent people think about this.
And these metrics they're. I know a lot of people will be like, "Oh, analytics, advanced numbers, blah 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 blah." They're not.
Look at the eye test too, though.
Yeah, they're not. They're not. They can be wrong at times, but they are normally pretty good or pretty accurate at determining what tier you deserve to be included in. And I'm not going to say that being 230 in Ken Pom is magnificent. It's not. You're still a below average team. But 297, you're close to being just irrelevant. I don't want to say about Canisius because the win over St. Bonaventure was tremendous. The KAC, Kessler Athletic Center, was rocking, and it was a great atmosphere and a great rivalry win for the Griffs. But it feels like that was undone the last 2 games, losing to Cornell. I'm not completely undone. That's unfair. Regardless of what happens, they're going to be proud of that win over St. Bonaventure, and that's something that they can talk about for years. But losing to UB the way they did was disappointing. And when you look at this team, Canisius, you got really only 3 scorers. It's Jordan Henderson, Jameer Moultrie, and Taz Staveski. Taz Staveski is shooting 39%. Henderson is 37%. And then you have Moultrie off the bench at 43.5%.
Yeah.
When you have 2 of your top 3 shooters shooting under 40% from the field, that's not getting done. And the thing about this Canisius team is they are too heavily reliant on the 3 ball. And against St. Bonaventure, it worked out. But just pulling up the stat from Sunday at UB, a second here on my screen, they shot 8 of 36 from 3, 22%. They had 72 shots against UB, 72 shots, half of them 3-point attempts. And it's one thing if you got an open 3, you're feeling it. You're like, whatever, put it up. I understand basketball has changed in recent years. It's a very 3-oriented game. But when you're making only 22%, you need something else. You need something to switch to. And I just don't think this Canisius team really has many people they can look to generate offense outside of those 3 guys. And that's going to be tough in Metro Atlantic athletic play when you're playing the Ionas and you're playing these teams that can just run up and down the court. In Niagara, I do believe has a guy that can do that for them.
Well, we'll see. I mean, here's the bottom line, Mike. The MAC isn't very good. So when you're talking about a plethora of teams in the 200s of the RPIs, you're talking about toss-up type games. So it'll be interesting. Like I said, I like conference play. I like to see teams beat up on each other, and I think it brings the best out of teams. So I'm excited.
I got a number for you if you want.
Start. So, Mike, I want to close our show today with a little bit of a different. We're going to talk about 2 coaches. I don't have the second one up, but I want to start with Nate Oats, former UB guy. I know me and you are big fans. They've had an impressive start to this year, and it was highlighted by that thriller last night, 4 overtimes. We exchanged texts all night last night. They beat then number 1 North Carolina, who did lose earlier in the week as part of that Phil Knight Classic, but we're still ranked number 1 at the time. And they were able to outlast the Tar Heels last night, 103-101. Mike, I think we all thought that Nate Oats would have success. Okay, his first year, I think it was he win the SEC in his second year?
Second year. First year was slightly above 500, but there was no NCAA tournament. So
in the second year, so in the second year, He wins the SEC. All right, sends 3 guys to the league. Granted, he was taking over that program. Sends 3 guys to the league. Then last year, they have a really good year. End up falling short in the first round of the tournament. I think a lot of that was due to some injuries down the stretch. Quinterly towards ACL, but now he's got this team ranked number 11. I mean, last year they beat Gonzaga on the West Coast. They're a perennial contender at this point, Mike. What do you make of this? I mean, this is awesome. I mean, he's taken Alabama and turning them as close to a basketball school as they could possibly be, as long as Nick Saban's the football coach.
What I make of it is exactly what I've been preaching since I was a college student at Ohio University, and that's recruiting is the single most important aspect of winning in college athletics. It's more important than what you know, who you know. It's more important than developing. Recruiting is the single most important aspect. And Nate Oats and Brian Hodgson are 2 of the best recruiters in college athletics at the current moment. The fact that Oats and Hodgson were at UB and found a top 150 recruit, Janathan Williams, to come to UB, sensational. They were able to get Rondo Segou to come to UB. Incredible. Even before that, to find CJ Massenberg, who was an overlooked player in Texas, who only had one other offer to a low-level school. So not only do they find a way to convince some of the top recruits to go to a school that many people would deem beneath them, they also find the diamonds in the rough that are overlooked. So that tells me 2 things. One, they are able to build the relationships with players that can convince them to want to be a part of something. And number 2, they can identify talent that other coaches and other people overlook. And that is such a skill set. And then you put them at a school like Alabama, it's unfair. Like, Alabama is having top 5 recruiting classes. They're going after All-Americans, top 20 players in the nation.
Yep.
If Nate Oats was at North Carolina or Duke, he'd be getting 5-star. He would be getting the top recruit in the country to come to Duke and UNC. He'd be getting the top classes in the country. He's a Coach K. He's a John Calipari type recruiter. And that is why Alabama is at this level. And you factor in that he actually knows a thing or two about developing and coaching the game as well. And that is why Alabama is so dangerous, because sometimes you have people that are just a recruiter or just a great coach, and or they're at an already great program. But when you're a great recruiter, great coach, and developer, and you're at a P5 program, it's hard to beat that.
Players coach, Mike. The players love they love playing.
He's fiery, blue collar, love it.
And they love playing for him. I mean, he gets technical fouls. He's fired up. I mean, he loves his guys. You see him in the locker room yesterday. But Mike, look at this. You want to talk about a schedule, all right? Phil Knight Invitation, they plays Michigan State, beats them by 11. Michigan State at the time was ranked 18th. Now they're ranked 12th. He loses to Connecticut, who's now ranked in the top 10. Beats Carolina, who was ranked 1 coming into the week. They go back to Tuscaloosa now. They play South Dakota State on Sunday. Following week, they're going to go at number 1 Houston, home against Memphis, who probably be ranked in the top 25 at that time. Then a neutral floor game against Gonzaga. I mean, who was the top ranked 6 or 8 in the country right now. I mean, Mike, that's a testament to how good he recruits and how good these players are. He has enough confidence. 6 out of 7 games, Mike. Michigan State, UConn, North Carolina, Gonzaga.
That's wild.
Gonzaga, Memphis, Houston. I mean, you're talking about 4 of the last 6 Final Four. I mean, 4 or 6 Final Four. I mean, the guy is good, okay? And it makes us miss those glory days at UB. And he's fun to root for. He's fun to watch. His teams are fun to watch. He's got players. I mean, just dating back, when he had Herb Jones. Herb Jones was unbelievable at Alabama. Like now he's unbelievable for the New Orleans Pelicans in the NBA.
Got a comment here too by our buddy Nick English. He said Jaden Bradley will be an X factor for Bama. Saw him all year at IMG. Special talent.
Yeah, I mean
These are the guys he gets.
He was all Jaden Bradley last night, Mike. He didn't stuff the stat sheet. He was the reason they won the ball game. He came up with timely buckets. He knew when to take shots. He knew when to get in the offense. That's a great point.
The whole thing, like, think about Mark Sears. Mark Sears had 24 points last night. He wasn't even touching the ball in overtime because he's like their third or fourth option.
They did this last night too with Noah Clowney leaving 3 minutes into the game. He falls on his tailbone. And then take a look at Javon Quinley tears his ACL 7.5 months ago. He's already back playing. He's already back playing 44 minutes last night. I mean, he's got Brandon Miller on his team who didn't have a good game last night, but Brandon Miller is going to be a lottery pick or pretty close to it.
Dominic Welch is on the bench,
pro.
And he's
Dominic Welch hasn't even plays in a walking.
He's hurt, and when he does return, he'll probably be the 8th or 9th man. And he was literally a starter on a top 25 team last year. Like, you think about Mark Sears.
He's the 8th or 9th man, Mike, and still might average double digits.
Mark Sears was a 20-point per game player at Ohio, top mid-major, and now he's like the third or fourth option on Alabama. It's incredible.
Like, it's one thing I definitely want to follow this year. I want to follow this Tide squad. I want to follow Nate Oats. Someone asked me the other day, do you think he can go bigger?
Yes.
And I said, but here was my response, Mike. Of course, the guy could coach anywhere. All right.
Does he want to?
My whole thing is Alabama's pretty darn big. All right.
You know what, though? They don't have the history. So there's two ways of looking at it. Do you want to create the history and be the man?
That's the thing.
Alabama has never gone to a Final Four in basketball.
Nope. But they're making that investment, building that new arena, which is set to open in a few years. Okay. They are doing things to build the history. And I think it would be awesome if Nate Oats could be the reason that history gets written.
It would take a blue blood coming after him for, I think, Nate Oats to leave.
I would agree by that.
I'm talking
there's only a few jobs that I think would be.
I'm talking a Duke, a Michigan State, Kentucky, correct. UCLA,
correct.
A Kansas.
There's only a few jobs, Mike, that you could say would be like an upgrade from where he's at, both financially and from a resources standpoint.
Tuscaloosa is a great place. He has a family.
Exactly.
He's comfortable. I personally, I like the fit in Alabama. Take it to where you can. And like I said,
and
you never know. Other opportunities present themselves. If a UCLA goes to Nate Oats one day and is like, hey, we're prepared to offer you a 5-year, $50 million contract. That's not even, I guess, much anymore. A 10-year, $100 million contract. Would he go to UCLA? Well, I think most coaches would be crazy to leave UCLA. But there is other factors to play into his decision. One being, at Alabama, I'm a god as a basketball coach. They will never think about firing me until I have years of failure, which I believe in myself, and I'm not going to have that failure. At UCLA, if I miss the NCAA tournament, I'm on the hot seat the very next year. I could be fired. So,
but honestly, Mike, here's the thing. I don't think he's thinking about leaving. And I think if he keeps doing what he's doing, Alabama will make it nearly impossible.
I don't think he's thinking about leaving. But what I'm saying is, sometimes when the blue bloods come offering to you, it's not because you were thinking about leaving. They just were too good of an opportunity to turn down.
This is the year, Mike, that he can really make that splash if he's able to get this team to an Elite Eight or even a Final Four for the first time. I mean, a Sweet 16 appearance would be great. SEC title would be great. And SEC titles mean a lot. But if he's able to get this team deep into March, I think that's when you'll start to hear that conversation.
They should make a Final Four under him, but they could have done it a couple years ago, and that was disappointing to lose in the Sweet 16. One thing I do want to mention, because I did see it on your preview today, was that you wanted to talk about some of the Bana seniors that moved on and transferred this past offseason. And you know what? We discussed North Carolina's second loss of the season against Alabama, but we did not mention their first loss of the season and who that came against. and that was Iowa State,
It
where
was.
2 St. Bonaventure Bonnies transfers are starting for the Cyclones, and one of them, Jaron Holmes, is making a greater impact at Iowa State than he ever did at St. Bonaventure, which I consider one of the shocking developments of the early college basketball season.
Yep. Iowa State ranked today in the new AP poll 21 or 22, which I actually thought was a little low, seeing the fact how successful they were. But they moved into the top 25. Osuna didn't have a great game this weekend, but has been a good impact player. A couple double doubles for them. Kyle Lofton is playing all right at Florida right now. It's good to see him. He's starting, playing a lot of minutes. And like we talked about, Dominic Welch has yet to see the floor due to his foot injury, which
Jaron Holmes, 22.
But Jaron Holmes has been the standout, Mike, of this Iowa State
Are you kidding me? Who saw that?
I mean, the guy was talented, but I mean, to see him do what he's been doing so quickly like that has been awesome. I mean, you would have thought if anybody was going to be successful, it was going to be Assume, right? Because he's big, he's lanky, he can block shots. I think everyone thought, well, this guy can be successful at any level, right? And we're starting to see that, while he was good for Bana, and he's been good so far, it's the other guy. I mean, just take a look. Like Holmes is shooting over 36% from three. He's averaging 16.7 a night. He scored in double figures every game this year. He's also averaging 4 rebounds.
Four too. I mean,
he's averaging 2 steals a game. I mean, this guy's putting up all Big 12 numbers in 6 games in his first year in the Big 12. It's awesome to see, Mike. I think that's really what it comes down to. It's awesome to see. And you know what's funny, Mike, about Jaron Holmes is out of all the guys that went to Alabama, I would have thought it would have been him. He's a Romulus, Michigan guy.
Yeah, it's
Romulus.
It's pretty crazy when you think about it. And not to put down anything Jaron Holmes did at St. Bonaventure, I think everybody recognizes he was one of the key stars during Bana's recent run. But at St. Bonaventure, his field goal percentage is similar to what it was at Bana. He's at 41% right now. Last year, he's 39%, and he was 42% the year before. But he's getting a lot more responsibility. He's playing 8 less minutes a game, but he's putting up 3.5 shots more per game. Iowa State is letting him be the man, which at Bonaventure, with the 4-guard lineup that they had, he never really had that opportunity. He had moments. He had periods where he was allowed to take over. But when you have Kyle Lofton, who's the primary point guard, and you have Jalen Attaway, who needs to have the ball in his hands, and Dominic Welch, who needs to get his shots off, he was limited at times in the Bana offense. And right now, I know 3 shots doesn't sound like a lot, but when you have
right now, Mike,
when you have 3 more shots per game in 8 less minutes, that is quite a bit. And though I am a little surprised by Osuna shooting, obviously one of the greatest St. Bonaventure players of all time, amazing player. I thought after his freshman year, midway through his freshman year, that he had NBA potential. I looked at his length, I looked at his shot blocking ability. I told myself, if he puts on some muscle and develops a little bit of an offensive game, I think he could play at the next level. Now in his 5th college season, playing in the Big 12, I don't believe that anymore.
No.
He has incredible length. He is a shot blocker. He does not rebound well enough for his size, and he doesn't have an offensive game, and he really hasn't developed it. 11 points in the Big 12, that's great. But the fact that you've now in your 5th year of college basketball, he needed to develop other aspects that just hasn't come around yet, which is slightly disappointing. Not saying he can't be part of a tremendous team, tremendous squad, but normally 5th year college players don't get a chance at the NBA if they don't dominate. And I am not seeing that from him right now. Just a few other quick ones. Kyle Lofton, you mentioned him, around 10 points a game, 4 assists. I think with Kyle Lofton, what we're seeing is pretty much what we saw at St. Bonaventure. We're seeing, sorry about that right there. We're seeing a guy that was a very good A10 player who is a solid SEC player. Good, nothing elite. What made those players so special at St. Bonaventure were they were all the same year and they all played together for 3-4 seasons. And that was what truly made them special. And to have it culminate in a NIT Final Four and NCAA tournament appearance, that's what made it special. On their own, they're still very talented, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those where you're glad to see them get the opportunity at a bigger school, but it's sad that they're going out away from St. Bonaventure where they'll get the memories, but you wish it would have just been able to complete itself down in St. Bonaventure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be cool to watch them the rest of the year, especially it seems like a few of these guys have a real good shot to go to the tournament as well, so that'll be good. Mike, we're going to wrap up this week, but I want to go next week, and I want to talk a little bit about Bobby Hurley too. What he's doing at Arizona State, it deserves some love as well. He's got his Arizona State
one more player.
Sun Devils. Yep.
Josh Mballa not working out in Mississippi. Shade over 3 points a game. He thought leaving UB, the sky was great. Was going to be much better. Turns out at UB, he was able to get the spotlight in the SEC. He's just another man. It's unfortunate. Didn't work out when he was at Texas Tech. I think sometimes these players go from a P5 school to a mid-major. They get more minutes. They get more production. They think by the time they're seniors, they can go back to the P5 school and that they're magically going to look much better. There's a reason why he was a bench player that barely saw the court at Texas Tech, and that's because with his size, he was not able to compete with the top big men in the Big 12. In the MAC, it was a different story. Now he's in the SEC, and he's getting that dose of reality once again. It's unfortunate, but that's reality.
Yep. Well, we're going to follow these guys more as we rock and roll here. Like I said, next week I want to talk Bobby Hurley and Arizona State, see if they can keep it rolling, maybe sneak into the top 25 next time we talk. But what he's doing deserves some praise as well. He's been there a long time, and finally seems like he's got these guys going in the right direction. So, Mike, episode 4, talking Big 4 hoops. We are done for the night. Big week of college basketball, highlighted by what we think is probably the best game of the week in Big 4. We got Bonaventure at Buffalo, Saturday, 2:30 inside Alumni Arena. We'll bring you all the recap and all of our reactions next Monday, 6:30, right here, talking Big 4 hoops. That's Mike Bunt. I'm Jonathan Snyder. We'll see you all next week.